So it's just a couple weeks after, a month or so after the halfway point of the term. So I wanted to know, looking back over the past 2 years, be objective as possible. How have you done?
I'm always objective. And first, I'd like to introduce Marco Rumuno, who is our Director of Planning Services. Important element as we go forward and doing some of the things we want. I think it's been a good 2 years. In some respects, it's gone by extremely quickly. Certainly, of course, a lot of new learnings that I've been partaking in. I believe that as we've gone through the process, and I'm getting more comfort when I get a better sense of the town, a better sense of what the residents are looking for. So I think that's probably one of my biggest learnings over the 2 years. One of the areas that we talked about, certainly when before the election, was moving towards being more open, more accountable.
Okay.
And I think that we've made great progress on that. One of the things I think that you and I have talked about before, and I certainly have mentioned it with other people, is that one of the first things I did was open the doors. So the doors around here used to be locked, so you couldn't get in. And I believe that what that does is it just indicates that we're open for business, not only for businesses to come in, but also for residents and for our staff members, and to create a different level of civility in the organization. So I believe that that was a big win for our organization, because that makes people more, quite frankly, it makes it a more enjoyable experience for them, which just translates down to providing better services to our residents. Okay. So I think that's probably one of the biggest wins. We have, as I mentioned last year in my chamber speech, one of our biggest wins was landing Bulk Barn head office, which is progressing very nicely. Marco just updated me a while ago, they've actually pulled their permits. If you've seen, we've done a lot of servicing out that way. They'll be starting to build, I think, within a couple of months now.
Yeah, they were actually preparing the site, putting in their site servicing, and we'll see the building construction starting over the next month or two.
Okay. So that'll be over 300 jobs. I think they're still finalizing what the job count will be. But certainly in excess of 300 jobs is a great win for the town. We have downtown has always been a challenge in terms of progressing forward, but we've made some great progress there. Mary Dell had put a apartment building in down at Tyler and Young. Okay. That was finished off a couple of years ago. So I think that was probably the start of moving forward. Centro, under the ownership of Tridell, is Caitlin. I'm sorry, I mix those two up constantly, and I don't know why. Is moving in. They're moving along in their development just up north of Wellington and Young. That's going to be 74 units. 74 units. Good-looking building. I think that will help to move the northern part forward. I think with the development now of Oshucks taking over the Thompson's building, I think that's a great boon for the downtown core. It signals that business is actively interested in developments down there, and someone's willing to put a substantial investment into that building and turn it into something that's I think going to be quite spectacular. So we're really looking forward to that.
So you're going to be bringing the people in there to live there, but how do you get them to kind of stay there and do their business there and actually impact the economy within the downtown core? How do you see that fitting in?
Well, part of that was with Mary Dell putting residences in there, Centro putting residences in there. If you go back and do some reading on Jane Jacobs, her comments have always been, don't bring people downtown, have them downtown. So certainly as those residents go in on Yonge Street, that will help that. Obviously, if people are living there, then that will create some impetus for people to put, the grocery store in that we want in that area, or the convenience stores, that kind of thing. We've also got the Well Street lofts going in, and that's I'm not sure where they sit in the process, Marco.
The council approved their planning applications and site plan application a couple months ago, and so they're working with staff, finalizing their engineering drawings and agreements, and they're looking to start construction. I believe towards the end of this year, or before the end of 2013.
Okay. So that's and the Well Street lofts is in the old Well Street Public School. So certainly that's also very, very much in the heart of downtown. It's another opportunity for people to be able to live there. It's 39, 40 units, I believe, that's going in there. So just another great opportunity for people to be able to live in the downtown core.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we have seen recently is related to the downtown core is also promenade plan. So can you tell me a little bit about, we've experienced one group coming forward and trying to put their applications in and experiencing some questions that answer some pertaining to their plan. Do you feel that that it's more of a guideline rather than requirements, or how do you go about making it something that's also attractive to the people that are potentially coming into the community, as well as maintaining what the people want in the promenade? Where do you find that balance?
That's a tough question, because everything is always about balance, and part of that balance question, of course, is cost.
Yeah.
So how do you manage all that? I think part of how we work through that is through the community improvement plan that Marco's department is running, to get a better sense. And we had a presentation at council a couple of weeks ago from a consultant who's been making some suggestions as to what we do, and some of it is simple as putting plantings down the road, that type of thing. So just something to make it look better, to improve the streetscape that way. I think part of that is we need to work more closely with the business community, with the chamber, and there's been talk of having a business improvement association going in as well. I think we all need to be actively engaged with each other. That it's not just the town's responsibility. We need to have this as a community responsibility to drive that forward and get a commonality as to how we want that to look, feel, and work.
Okay. Well, this might be a better question for you, Mark, but one of the things that was discussed at the Economic Development Committee in terms of community development and also business improvement is that there needs to be a buy-in from the business. And again, the businesses in the community, they have to want to do it, and they indicated that had been a problem in the past, getting some of that interest. Do you find it's a different climate in actually getting that interest going to make it something that can happen?
I mean, it's always a challenge, but I think we've received some good feedback with some of the workshops we've held over the past year on the streetscape design plan. They were well attended, and I think, as the mayor mentioned, now that we have direction to start the community improvement plan, we will be going out and surveying the businesses and having a number of workshops and getting the local businesses out and residents and seeking their input and moving forward and actually developing the plan. So it's key to get buy-in from our local businesses downtown.
Okay. Now, in terms of the other big development, that's the other big initiative that's coming in are all the businesses that could be coming in through the 2C development. So I want to know if you can tell me, since you already mentioned the Bulk Barn coming in, but have you made any inroads with any other significant businesses that have expressed interest in coming to that area?
Unfortunately, there's nothing we can announce at this point, but we've had some interesting queries. As you know, there's the Holgrove Park, Business Park, which is the southeast corner of Leslie and Wellington. It's fairly full. There's still some space left. We've had some inquiries there. We own the land south of that. We've had some pretty interesting inquiries from a couple of people around that would bring in some pretty interesting jobs. So we have had that. Also, we have what we refer to as the 2C East and the West, so the east side of Leslie and the west side of Leslie. The east side of Leslie is the employment lands. And the group that owns that, Emery Investments, is coming forward with some of their applications, zoning application. First of all, that's part of the technical requirements that they have to go through. They own about 200 acres, so that's just north of what would be the state farmlands, up to the natural feature that runs just south of St. John's Side Road. So they're coming through with a development to start designing that out, which should correspond quite nicely with the housing development, which is going to go in on the west side of Leslie Street.
Okay. Have you, in terms of the businesses that could potentially be going in there, have you given any further thought to how to balance it? I mean, you have the areas that are going to be near the 404, kind of on the periphery of Aurora, but how do you get them to become interested further into Aurora, whether it's on Industrial Parkway, for instance, or whether it's on the main drag, for lack of a better phrase? How do you ensure that there's also interest throughout the community, not just in a concentrated area?
I think part of that happens organically. If it's a manufacturing company, they in all likelihood do not want to be located on the 404 because that property is just more expensive. So that, the natural evolution for that it would be down Industrial Parkway. So I think part of that happens. So I think a lot of that depends on what the business itself is. And then, as an example, through the community improvement plan, some of the options that we have up Yonge Street would be some tax deferral plans or some other investments that we can look at working with those businesses. Mm-hmm. So, and none of this has been approved by council, so this is it's just some blue sky here. But there's some options that we can look at that if council approved, we can use that to attract certain businesses to the Yonge Street core.
Okay. One of the things you mentioned in your last address to the chamber, your last big address to the chamber, I wanted to know, well, first of all, you covered kind of the state of the local economy here and how global issues really had affected things locally. But how is that, what is the current state of the Aurora economy in your opinion in terms of the wider picture?
I think a great indicator of the local economy, first of all, is building permits. So we are getting people who are coming in and they're taking out permits to put up buildings. So I think that's always a good thing. Also, the housing sale. Now, the housing sale, the market, the quantity of sales is not as robust this year as it has been in the past, but the pricing is holding. So I think that's an indicator that people are perhaps being a little more selective in when they move and how they move, but they're also being selective in where they wish to move to, and that is helping us hold our housing price. So I believe that that's a fairly good indicator.
So if the sales haven't been robust, does that cause any concern from the town's perspective at all with the thousands of houses that are going to be going in with the 2C in terms of how it will affect the local economy?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Because we won't start to see housing most likely until 2014. Mm-hmm. Is that correct, Michael? Mm-hmm. So if you look at that, economies are always cyclical, and I would suggest we are on the coming out from the bottom of it. It's still an issue for certain people, obviously, but if you look at the U.S. statistics, their housing market is starting to recover as well, and a lot of their recovery drives business in Canada, especially for raw materials.
Okay. So when those houses come online, really, what economic impact do you think it'll have to Aurora as a whole?
Wow, substantial.
Okay.
We're looking at a total of 3,000 units by the time it's all said and done. Mm-hmm. So you look at the development money that will come out of that, the tax assessment money that will come out of that. Just look at, they're going to be buying groceries, they're going to be going to the dry cleaners, they're going to be going to the hardware store. So I think it's going to be a substantial impact to Aurora.
Now, the tax assessment will be something that's always going to be rolling in from that area, but what about, since it is the last large-scale development likely to happen in Aurora, I wanted to know, how do you keep that particular market stimulated in terms of bringing new people in, and basically when you get to build it, how do you keep that going? How do you keep the economy flourishing?
Well, I think you keep the economy flourishing by we have to adjust how we do business. As we get to build it, we will have to adjust how we do business. Mm-hmm. So we'll move, as an example, the planning and development department would automatically downsize just because we're not getting all that. But other parts of our business will grow out as we're looking at more services or more facilities and that kind of thing. So we have to ensure that we're being careful of how we manage our business with that. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of keeping the economy robust in Aurora is that we just continue to ensure that we provide the best possible service we can to ensure that businesses come into town and stay into town. So as an example, through Marco's department, we just finished our business retention and expansion survey. We're doing the follow-up work now, so that we have to indicate to our businesses and our residents that yes, we're interested in you coming here, but we're also equally interested in you staying here.
Mm-hmm. So what's been the feedback like? Some of the feedback that you're receiving from the business retention? So
put that over to Marco.
That's been positive. I mean, there have been a number of follow-up questions where they're just interested in services and information that we can provide to them. And I don't have the numbers handy, but I think we did survey close to 200 local residents over the last year, and the number of callbacks that we received was significant. So that was positive, and it was exciting that there was interest in obtaining information from the municipality in order to help them thrive and in their business here in Aurora and keep them there and just assist when we can. And just on the point about redevelopment, and once we build out with our 2C area, our greenfield area, I mean, we will focus on our redevelopment opportunities, and naturally builders and developers out there will be, if they're interested in coming to Aurora, and I think they'll be looking at redevelopment opportunities and intensification opportunities within our downtown Penn Street, Wellington corridor. So, and that takes a lot longer to evolve over time as opposed to new subdivision type developments. But
so you mentioned kind of intensification and related topics like that, but there are other things in town that are kind of, that might be seen as a hindrance to that, whether it's the official plans or permanent sites and kind of limiting the heights of buildings to kind of retain the small town feel. Do you think that's sustainable in the long run, trying to maintain that feel, or do you think once we reach build out, we'll have to build up?
I think you have to look at the size of the development that's going in. Before the old Thompson's furniture building was taken over for the new Shucks, there was a couple of developers who came in and looked at going up, and they couldn't make it work with the narrow footprint with the height restrictions, so they chose not to go forward. If that was perhaps over 2 or 3 buildings, then you can amortize your costs over a larger floor plate and perhaps make that more feasible. But we may, so that's one way to look at that. We may have to look at, well, is there an application that makes sense that we perhaps go to 8 stories as opposed to 7? I don't know. I mean, that comes to council, and council will make that determination. But if you look at probably one of our largest redevelopment areas, which would be the northwest corner of Wellington, the old IGA store, Rice Shopper store, that's an area where I think you could easily achieve a pretty substantial development, but based on that 7-story height, because you're now advertising that over a very large floor plate.
Okay. So from that, have there been any interest in I guess striking that balance between those who want to maintain we have a small town feel right here in an urban center, really, but versus building up or having something more dynamic isn't the right word, but something that's more intensified. Has there been any appetite for that?
I mean, the Wall Street application is a good example. I mean, they added 2 floors to the Wall Street old public school, and it was well received from the local residents. And again, it was a minor addition, adding 2 floors and retaining the old designated building. So I think that was well received by the community. And so if applications do come forward within the downtown and they are proposing to exceed the current official plan heights, it's something that we'll have to present to council, and will have to be evaluated on its merits. But again, the plan is clear. We want strong urban design in any development within our municipality. Really, it's a question of heights and what it looks like, and it's something that would be evaluated by council when an application comes forward.
Okay. Now, I know this isn't an Aurora-specific topic, since it would fall under the jurisdiction of the province, but if the plans to build the interchange on St. John's Side were to actually come to fruition, what effect do you think that will have on Aurora?
I think that's a great opportunity for us to take pressure off of Wellington, so that whole young Wellington interchange. Perhaps give us an opportunity to look at how to fix up that interchange. That certainly takes, that's going to be an issue as the 2C residences come online, that we will have the opportunity to migrate some of that traffic north to the different interchange and take some of that pressure off. The region's certainly well aware that that's an issue as well, and they're looking at it.
Do you think that pressure at all has at all hindered or affected the businesses in the downtown area? But people may not feel welcome to stop, for instance, and shop, or...
I don't know if that's been a major issue or not. There's certainly lots of parking in that area, and the north-south parking is restricted, so you can't park on the east side in the evening rush hour. You can't park on the west side in the morning rush hour. But then, most people aren't probably out shopping at that time anyways. So I'm not sure that that's probably had a major issue.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned many different things, but overall, looking ahead to the bigger picture, I wanted to know, should this question maybe be posed to you at the Chamber of Commerce, I wanted to know what do you think Aurora's biggest asset is in terms of businesses going forward? What would be the chief selling point?
I think the chief selling point of Aurora is the fact that we have invested heavily in what we are in what Aurora is as a community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a place where it's not just a bedroom community. It's not just a bedroom community where you hop in your car first thing in the morning, leave, and come back late at night. We have invested heavily in our infrastructure, in our facilities,
Mm-hmm.
to make it much more of a community home. And I think that's reflected, or that's confirmed by the fact that we have businesses that are starting to locate here. And substantial, like the bulk mart, substantial businesses are locating here. Because they're saying, it's a good place, our State Farm. It's a good place we want to, a place we can live, work, and play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that by investing in that and taking that lead, we have created a great community that becomes a complete community.
Okay. So the recent political candidates, both provincially and federally, that have come to the riding, they've also touched upon a similar theme of combating the notion that communities like Aurora are bedroom communities for Toronto. So from a local perspective, how do you go about combating that perception, whether it's to potential new residents or to potential new businesses that are coming to invest here, bring jobs to Aurora?
You do that by showing them around. I mean, I think that's the simplest thing. We had some people who came in before Christmas, and they were interested in where they could build, where they could have a place. So I hopped in my car and I drove them around. That's what you do. You say, you can locate here, and by the way, there's housing here, and there's housing going in here. So there's all sorts of opportunities. I think you just go back to Sales 101 and say, here's our benefits, here's our features, here's what's going to do for you.
Okay. So we talked about the biggest assets in terms of potential new businesses. But what do you think are the biggest stumbling blocks that need to be overcome by the town? Economic barrier for business.
I would say none.
I'm sure you would say that, but really.
I think, stumbling blocks, traffic certainly through the downtown cores, traffic through Wellington is a challenge, there's no question of that. I think that the fact that we do not have grade separated crossings for the railway, I think is a huge issue.
Okay.
So as example, as we move towards 2015 with all-day GO service,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be a substantial issue that we need to address. And we had our MP, Lois Brown, invited councils out a couple of months ago for a breakfast meeting. She does that on a regular basis just to keep in touch. And certainly one of the things I addressed was grade separated crossings. I think that's a place that we have to start, especially a great place to do would be St. John's Side Road, because it would be an easy place to do it. It would be very challenging here in Wellington. But I think we need to look at that to provide some of that easing of traffic. It's going to be a challenge. I mean, it's going to be a huge challenge.
Okay. Now, go back to the start of this interview. You mentioned increasing the accessibility within town hall for people to come in and talk to you. For instance, come into your office. So have you found that there's been an uptake in that, people wanting to come in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's kind of sad actually. There's a number of staff people around here who had never been in this office.
Okay.
So let's let the doors open.
So so now that the doors are open, what issues do you find that people are bringing to you, or bringing to your attention?
There's very few issues that staff people bring to me directly.
Mm-hmm.
I think what it does is it just creates the atmosphere of openness and a willingness to listen and a willingness to talk. So I think that's just, there's no one's coming here and said specifically, this is going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it creates a different atmosphere in town hall.
Okay. So you've gone through the halfway point of this term of council, and you mentioned a little bit earlier about the accomplishments and things like that. But what's your game plan for the second half of for the next? I should say 2 years, but really the next year and 11 months or so.
A year and whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I think we now look very aggressively towards making sure that the 2C development, I think that's a real, probably the major issue is making sure that the 2C development that goes in is the best that we can make it. It's going to be our last substantial development. Mm-hmm. notwithstanding that there's a development that's going in at the south end of town, but that's our last major one. So we've just had a couple of meetings on terms of design standards, and we're wrestling right now with the parking issue. You recall that from a couple of weeks ago at council. So how do we do that? Just make sure that, because that's a trade-off, because we have a certain density that we have to adhere to. That's under the Places to Grow Act. So there's a certain density requires a certain number of houses. So how do we trade that off? I think that's probably one of the major challenges, to make sure that we just make that as good as we can possibly make it.
Okay. And in terms of wider perspective, is there anything else that you personally would like to see put on the plate for council consideration or for the town consideration?
I think for town consideration, I'm still a big proponent of getting the town of Aurora a better representation at the region. And that's been on the plate for a while. I still think that we should have a second representative, however that falls out at the region. I think it's not a particularly sexy thing, but I think it's important for how we move our town forward.
So those initial attempts have been a little bit less than successful. So
a little bit less than enthusiastically received, I might say.
So how'd you like to build that enthusiasm? What would be your pitch?
There is I think there's a greater willingness now on the part of other regional councillors to consider, because we're saying, well, how else can we achieve this? It doesn't. I mean, if you talk that we're going to increase, add five more elected members, everybody doesn't particularly like that. But if we look at other ways to do this, can I have an alternate? Right now, I'm not allowed to have an alternate. So as an example, if I cannot make a council meeting, then Aurora is not represented. Aurora doesn't have a vote on that particular issue. And there's ways around that, but I think it'd be more appropriate that if I can't make it, that the deputy mayor should be allowed to go.
Okay.
So, and because we're looking at different ways to do that, we're trying to be creative, I think that we stand a better chance of success.
Okay. So just finally, this is your big chance. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to get out there to all of our viewers?
By the time this is, I'm presuming by the time this is aired, we will have already had Arctic Day, so I hope everybody came out and had a good time. And just thank everybody for their attendance at our first 150th event last week. It was, or 2 weeks ago, pardon me. That was well attended. Chilly day, so we had lots of people out for that. We thank them for that. And as we move forward into the rest of our 150th events, we're looking forward to great uptake.
Okay. Is there anything that you'd like to add? Oh, you're good. Okay. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.